Why is Goblin Piledriver never sad? Because he has protection from the blues.
This video is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc. If you're looking for cards in the US, look no further as you can use the promo code MTGMudsta to get you 5% off anything on the site. You can also use the promo code MTGMudsta for 5% off your orders from Face to Face Games, Canada's largest Magic the Gathering store, with qualified orders getting free shipping Canada-wide. And if you just want to help out the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron for as little as $1 a month and join the generic Goblin Gang. Hey you! If you haven't signed up for the notification for my Kickstarter campaign, you should know it's live now. It features the incredible artwork of Andre Garcia, not to mention has tons of great add-ons, like dice, tokens, and a sweet two-sided coin. If you're interested in picking one up, look for the pinned comment below with the link to the Kickstarter. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game features Nick, MJ, myself, and Max playing some brand new decks, or new at the time. Max is playing Umbris, Fear Manifest, Nick is playing Nadaar, Selfless Paladin, MJ is playing Ziatora the Incinerator, and I'm rocking my Shorikai, Genesis Engine. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a Sajiri Refuge which comes in tapped and gains me 1. Max plays a Swamp. Nick has an Ancient Tomb, taking 2 as he taps it for a Dowsing Dagger. He gives me the 2 plant tokens and passes. MJ plays a Forest and casts Mana Crypt. Tapping all their mana, they cast a Nature's Lore to go and find Ziatora's Proving Ground and pass. I play a Plains and pass. Max has an Island, passing. Nick plays a Plains and casts Nadaar, taking 2, and ventures into the Lost Mines of Phandelver. He scries 1 and passes turn. MJ wins their flip and draws. They play a Swamp and cast Marin, passing. I play an Island and cast Foundry Inspector, passing as well. Max has a Rogue's Passage, and then casts a Toxic Deluge, putting 4 life into it to wipe the board. Nick draws and plays a Plains. He casts Skyclave Apparition, who upon entering, exiles the Mana Crypt and passes. MJ draws and Bajuka Bogs me. They then cast Lightning Greaves and pass. I draw and play a Plains. I cast an Esper Sentinel and then a Digsite Engineer and pass. Max has a Swamp for turn and casts Hostage Taker, stealing the Skyclave Apparition. After that, he passes turn. Nick draws and plays a Plains. He casts a Palace Jailer, exiling the Hostage Taker which had been exiling the Skyclave Apparition, and gets back the Apparition. This time as it enters, exiling my Esper Sentinel. MJ draws and is tired of the exile shenanigans, playing a Damnation to wipe the board. This has me getting an illusion from the Apparition as it dies, and MJ passes turn. I draw and play a Glacial Fortress. I then pay 4 for Shorikai and pass to Max. Max plays a Murkwater Pathway and casts Umbris. Max then exiles cards off of MJ's library as it enters and passes. Nick draws and plays another Plains. He then recasts Nadaar, venturing further and making a treasure token. Once that's done, he casts a Wall of Omens, drawing a card and passing turn. MJ plays a Command Tower for turn and follows up with a Mazeric. Once their creature's resolved, they equip it with the Lightning Greaves and go at Nick, connecting and stealing the Monarch. With the Monarch being taken, Nick returns the Hostage Taker to Max's side of the board. With the Hostage Taker re-entering, Max targets my Shorikai, which in response, I activate. After that, MJ draws from the Monarchy at the end of turn and passes to me. I play an Inventor's Fair for turn and recast Shorikai and pass. Max draws and plays a Voldaran Pariah. This has MJ exiling cards off the top of their library again, and Max then sends Umbris at Nick. Nick blocks with a Wall of Omens, and with nothing else, Max passes. Nick plays a Plains and casts a Delver's Torch and equips it and the Dowsing Dagger onto his commander before going to combat. He swings Nadaar at MJ and gives Umbris the -4/-0 off the dungeon trigger as he goes into another room, and then completes it once Nadaar connects, drawing a card. He also flips his Dowsing Dagger, and then using the mana from the Lost Veil, plays and equips a Swiftfoot Boots. MJ draws and plays a Mountain. They cast a Demonic Tutor and follow up with an Anger and pass to me. I play a Ghost Quarter for my land drop and cast Katori. I use Katori to crew up Shorikai, and moving to combat gives Shorikai Katori's trigger. I swing it at Max, and he jumps to the Hostage Taker while I gain 8, and after that, I pass. Max draws and casts a Maskwood Nexus. Moving to combat, he swings the Voldaran Pariah at Nick, dealing 3 and stealing the Monarchy, and once he's done, passes turn. Nick draws and goes to combat. He swings Nadaar at MJ, who chumps with Anger. Nick decides to venture into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage this time, gaining a life, scrying one to the bottom. He then follows up with an Emeria Angel and plays a Plains, making a bird token, and then casts Treasure Map and passes. MJ plays a Harvester of Souls and moves the Lightning Greaves to it, and then plays a Field of the Dead, making a zombie token as it comes in. Moving to combat, Mazurek steals the Monarchy from Max, and once that's done, MJ moves to their end step, drawing at the end of turn. During their end step, I activate Shorikai, drawing 2 and discarding a land. I draw and cast SRAM. I then cast a Mindlink Mech, drawing a card. And play Halimar Depths, reordering my top 3. I then use SRAM to crew Shorikai, and put the Katori trigger onto Shorikai as I go to combat. I swing it at Nick for 8, who chumps with the bird token. I gain 8, and I pass after that. Max draws and plays a Temple of Deceit, and follows up with a Sat's Will. This has me sacrificing SRAM, Nick sacrificing Emeria Angel, and MJ sacrificing the Harvester of Souls. MJ gets to draw 2 cards from the Harvester seeing the other creatures dying, and Mazurek puts 3+1/+1 counters onto their creatures. We also have to exile a bunch of cards from Umbris thanks to the Maskwood Nexus making the Thralls into horrors, and our graveyards get exiled as well from Svat's Will. Max then swings the Voldaran Pariah at MJ and Umbris at Nick. Nick blocks Umbris with Nadaar, and casts a Restoration Angel, flickering it and venturing as it comes back in. And as he ventures, picks the room to make Umbris unable to attack for the next turn. Max does gain the Monarchy though, and passes, drawing a card on his end step, while Nick activates the Treasure Map to scry 1. Nick draws and plays the Immortal Sun. He re-equips the Torch to Nadaar and goes to combat, swinging at Max. Max transforms as Voldaran Pariah in response, making Nick sacrifice 3 creatures. Nick still gets his Venture trigger at least, and makes 2 skeletons, and after combat, plays a Mother of Runes, and equips her with the Swiftfoot Boots, and passes. MJ has a Verdant Catacombs for turn, making a zombie from the Field of the Dead. They then play Ziatora, and move the Greaves over to it. Moving to combat, they swing at Max for 6, who takes the hit, and MJ becomes the Monarch. The Verdant Catacombs is then cracked, losing 1 for MJ, and finds a Bayou. This also pumps up their board thanks to Mazurek, and they follow up with a Skull Clamp, equipping it onto the zombie token. Moving to their end step, MJ sacrifices the zombie token, flinging it at me and making 3 treasures, and drawing some cards, and passing. I draw and play an island. I play a Prodigy prototype, and crew Shorikai with Katori again. Moving to combat, I give Shorikai the trigger and swing at Max for 8. He chumps it while I gain 8 and make a pilot token and pass. Max draws and plays a Hell's Caretaker, exiling cards from MJ's library this time thanks to the Umbris trigger. He then plays a Dead Man's Chest on MJ's largest zombie token, but MJ responds by casting Heroic Intervention to stop it. After that, Max passes. Nick scries 1 on his upkeep with Treasure Map and draws 2 thanks to the Immortal Sun. He then replays Nadaar, scrying 3 as he ventures further into the dungeon. He follows up with a legendary dragon, Owl of the Dawn Sky, and passes to MJ. MJ draws and plays Sunbird's Invocation, one of my absolute favorite cards. They then cast a Courser of Krufix, hitting a Reclamation Sage off the Sunbird's trigger. They use it to destroy the Immortal Sun, and sacrifice a treasure to equip the Skull Clamp to a zombie, and this pumps their team once more. Moving to combat, Ziatora goes at me, and Masaryk goes at Max. I crew up and chump with the Mindlink Mech, while Max chumps with the Abolisher of Bloodlines. Once that's done, MJ moves to their end step, sacrificing the 7-power zombie to Ziatora to kill the Hell's Caretaker, making 3 treasures and drawing some cards off the Skull Clamp and Monarchy from the end of turn. I draw and crew up Shorikai and swing at Nick. He chumps with a skeleton token and gives it protection from white for the Mother of Ruins. After combat, I then cast Katsumasa and pass. Max draws and plays a Consuming Aberration, exiling cards from me as it comes in with the Umbris trigger. He then casts a Distortion Strike on Umbris and mills us all the Aberration. Going to combat, Max swings his massive, unblockable Umbris at MJ, taking them out, and passes to Nick. Nick activates his Treasure Map to scry on his upkeep, and flips it before drawing. Going to combat, he makes a deal with me to help finish his dungeon to find an answer for Max, and swings at me with the Nadaar. I take the hit, and Nick flips 3 cards off the top, casting an Austere Command for free, and destroying all artifacts and big creatures. This has Ow dying, and Nick puts a Loyal Warhound and Flump into play off its trigger. After that, he plays an Eldrazi Displacer, and then casts Search the Premises, passing. I draw and play a tap Port Town. I go to combat and swing my 3 pilots at Max, taking the Monarchy and dealing 3. I then draw during my end step. Max's Distortion Strike rebounds on a Thrall, and he draws for turn. He recasts Umbris, and this time makes Nick exile. Moving to combat, he swings the Unblockable Thrall at me for 1, getting the Monarchy, and then drawing as he passes turn. Nick draws and plays a Plains. Going to combat, he swings the 2 skeletons at Max and Nadaar at me. I chump with my Illusion token, and Max eats 1 but loses the Monarchy as it gets hit by the other. After that, Nick plays a Trading Post and draws at the end of turn. I play Command Tower and then a Shiva Foundry and pass to Max. Max has a Soul Ring and casts Talisman of Dominance, and follows up with another Mana Rock with Dimir's Signet. He plays a Doomweaver, exiling cards off Nick again as it enters with Umbris, and Soul Bonds it onto Umbris as well. After that, Max passes turn. On the end of Max's turn, Nick sacrifices a skeleton to Trading Post to get the Immortal Sun back to his hand, and then flickers Nadaar with the Eldrazi Displacer, venturing further into the dungeon and getting a Goblin token this time. Nick draws and plays a Ghost Quarter. He recasts the Immortal Sun and casts a Smothering Tithe and passes. I draw but don't pay for the Tithe. I then recast Shorikai and pass to Max. Max draws and goes to combat, swinging Umbris at Nick. Nick makes a Clue token as he's getting attacked, and chumps with a Goblin token. After that, Max plays a Bloodline Pretender, exiling cards off of Nick's library, and then plays Gonti, targeting me. Max also plays a Woe Strider, once more exiling cards off Nick again thanks to Umbris, and passes turn. On his end step, Nick flickers Nadaar once more, putting a +1/+1 counter onto him, and then sacrifices a Clue token to Trading Post to draw a card. Nick draws and plays a Plains. He plays a Ranger's Hawk in a thorough investigation and goes to combat. Nadaar goes at me, making him a clue from an investigation, and draws a card from completing the Lost Mine of Phandelver this time around. I jump with a pilot token, and Nick then casts a dungeon map in his second main phase. During his end step, I cast Swords to Plowshares on Eldrazi Displacer, but Nick gives it pro white in response, and we move to my turn. I draw, and this time around pay for the Tithe, and then crew up Shorikai. I play a Cyberdrive Awakener, giving all of my artifacts flying, and swing Shorikai and the Chief of Foundry at max. Max blocks the Chief but takes 9 from Shorikai, and after that, I pass. Max draws for a turn but isn't happy with it, and sacrifices Umbris to the Woe Strider, drawing a bunch of cards because of its pairing with the Doomweaver. He doesn't pay for any of the Smothering Tithe triggers, which has Nick getting as many treasures as Max draws for. He then plays Bojuka Bog on me, and an Oblivion Sower, giving Max all of my exiled lands. Max follows up with a Baleful Strix, drawing 1 card, and then a Duplicant, targeting the Eldrazi Displacer. This has Nick responding by sacrificing it to Trading Post, and gets his Delver's Torch back in response. With nothing else, Max passes, and Nick sacrifices a Clue token, and ventures further into the Dungeon of the Mad Mage, gaining 1 life. Nick plays an Emeria of the Sky Ruin, and cycles Secluded Step to draw a card. He then plays a Bastion Protector. Moving to combat, he swings Nadaar at Max, who blocks the Oblivion Sower. In his post-combat main phase, Nick plays a Gold Mirror and then a Sword of the Anime. He then sacrifices a treasure token to Trading Post to draw a card, and casts Sun Titan, who upon entering, brings back Eldrazi Displacer. After that, he replays a Delver's Torch and passes turn. I gain a life from the Inventor's Fair and draw. I then crack the fair to go and find a Kappa Cannoneer. Once that's done, I crew up Shorikai and go to combat, swinging my 3 artifact creatures at Nick. This has Nick making 3 Clue tokens, and cast a Swords to Plowshares on Cyberdrive Awakener, and then block the Chief with Nadaar and Shorikai with Flumph, which he gives pro blue thanks to the Mother of Ruins. After that, I pass turn, while Nick sacrifices 3 Clue tokens to draw cards and ventures a bunch, making 2 skeletons, and then completing the Dungeon of the Mad Mage to draw 3 and cast a Stonecloaker, exiling a card from Max's graveyard and bouncing itself back to hand. Max draws and recasts Umbris, exiling off of Nick's library this time. He then plays a Nightmare Shepherd, which isn't a nightmare itself, and sacrifices the Bloodline Pretender to Woe Strider to bring it back. Nick responds with a Path on the Nightmare Shepherd, but Max has a counterspell to protect it. And Max then sacks Umbris to the Nightmare Shepherd to do it again, and repeats this with the Baleful Strix, and then the Duplicant, and as the Duplicant comes back, exiles the Eldrazi Displacer. Max then sacrifices Gonti, and once it comes back, looks at Nick's top 4. He then sacrifices the Sower as well to exile more cards, and then plays a land and casts Phenax, God of Deception. Max then uses his remaining creatures with Phenax's ability to mill Nick down to 1 card and passes. Nick uses Ghost Quarter on Rogue's Passage on his upkeep, but then draws 2 to the Immortal Sun, decking himself out and losing. I draw and play a Plains, but with nothing else, pass to Max. Max casts a Profane Transfusion in his main phase, swapping our life totals and making a massive horror token that as it enters, triggers Umbris to exile a bunch of my cards. He then plays a Blade of Selves, and taps his creatures to mill me out with Phenax, winning him the game. Game review time. So I think everyone's deck actually got to do pretty much what it wanted to do. Shorikai made vehicles, and I got to cast Cyberdrive Awakener, which is probably my favorite win condition in the deck. It's a beautifully powerful card, and I love the fact they can animate clue and treasure tokens to make them into beaters. Nick's Nadaar deck really actually plows through those dungeons, and I'm pretty impressed with how consistent it is. I'm not a big fan of mono white in general, but this deck is pretty sweet, and it gets a lot of value that white is normally missing by completing and going through dungeon rooms. I think MJ's Ziatora deck really got moving once Mazarek was out. When they were able to sacrifice creatures to basically pump up the rest of their board, things got really moving, and that Field of the Dead really helped. I do think Max was probably right in taking them out first, because their board state was about to get very dangerous with people sacrificing stuff, not to mention all the treasure they had to sacrifice and pump their board as well. Speaking of Max, Umbris is actually a pretty cool mill commander, despite the fact that it doesn't actually mill, but instead exiles. I kind of like the fact that the cards in exile continue to pump up Umbris, so you don't really lose that value you gained early on. And it was pretty cool to see him pair up the Doomweaver with his commander and then sacrifice it to the Woe Strider to draw like a zillion cards. This video wouldn't be possible without the help from my sponsors, Cool Stuff Inc., Multizone, Original Magic Art, and Alter Sleeves. But it definitely wouldn't be possible without the help from you, the viewers, and my patrons. So I just want to say thank you for watching, and to remember, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.